I'm Al Filreis.
I'm Anna Safford.
And this is ModPoMinute, actually 5 minutes.
We're hoping to scratch the surface of a short poem that we like.
So let's get started. Well, I'm here with Tyrone Williams. Tyrone, hi. Thanks for doing this.
Sure.
We've got a poem by Ted Joans called The Truth from his book Black Powwow Jazz Poems, 1969. And we'll talk about it. So would you read it first, Tyrone?
Okay. The Truth. If you should see a man walking down a crowded street, talking aloud to himself, don't run in the opposite direction, but run toward him, for he is a poet. You have nothing to fear from the poet, but the truth.
Now that is an unusual Ted Joans poem, because in this book, there's a lot of big, loud, ideological, black arts, black power stuff. And this is fairly modest, or maybe it's pretend modest. What's he doing in this thing?
Well, I'm not so sure about the modest part because
yeah,
he is saying that only the poet, and I think the poet has the truth, and no matter how he appears to be acting, and I think there's a direct connection, in fact, between the poet walking in the crowd as he's talking to himself as though he's not quite all there.
Right. Your typical poet, fuzzy-headed,
right,
not in touch with reality, but
he has the truth, and in fact, that behavior itself is the portal to the truth.
Yeah. So the funny thing in the first stanza is this is a weird guy walking down the street, so you don't want to run away from him. You want to run toward him,
right,
which is a counterintuitive move, so it's kind of funny. And then stanza break. And then we get some pretty serious, heavy-duty stuff because he's kind of warning you that you do have something to fear. So it's ironic. No?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, the nothing, it's interesting to look at the words that are capitalized: poet, nothing, and truth. And so those are all very important statements that the poem is making there. And I don't know what the connection is between the nothing and the truth, and the nothing and the poet. That's something I've often thought about in terms of this particular poem. Is in what sense is that nothing just as important as the truth and the poet?
Yeah. How does someone reading this poem decide is Ted Joans' idea of the poet's role? I mean, the first impression we have of this poet is probably the comic, conventional impression of someone who's out of touch. But if you if you read through the irony, what is he saying? That the poet is in touch in ways that you don't really watch out.
Right.
Yeah?
I think that's how I read this, that the poet looks, quote unquote, crazy or, insane or mad from the point of view of, normal society, as it were. And of course, I mean, the odd thing here, but perhaps in some ways conventional, is that it turns out that it's really the crowd, the society, that's truly mad, and the poet is the one who has the truth, but from the point of view of everybody else, that truth can only appear as a kind of madness.
Yeah. The title of the book is Black Powwow. Jazz Poems is a subtitle, but Black Powwow is a not so subtle pun on Black Power. Is there Black Power in this vintage 1969?
Yeah, I think there is. Now knowing Ted Joans, of course, you have to wonder, because his view toward his attitude toward the Black Power movement was not exactly reverent, shall we say?
Right.
And
it's
so
complex.
It's very complex, and so this is in part a kind of mockery, obviously, of the Black Power movement. But I also think he's also making a point in the title that what some people in the Black Power movement may have thought as uniquely Black powers and so forth actually are much more widespread. And you can find it in the so-called powwow, and presumably in jazz too, so that this is not just something that is true of Black poets, but perhaps of all no matter what culture they appear in.
One final question. You recently, you may have read this once upon a time, but we shared it just a few minutes before starting this
About 5 minutes ago.
Does it surprise you? Were you surprised a little at this? This is a Ted Joans poem in 1969.
Well, I can't say surprised only because I know the poem and so forth. So I wasn't, but having read a lot of Ted Joans, it is simple compared to, fairly simple compared to some other things that he writes. But knowing Ted Joans, you also wonder, is the simplicity of the poem also a kind of, stab at the Black Power movement? That
it may be
that this is you guys reduce everything to simplicity.
Yeah.
Let me just sort of imitate you doing this.
So the layers of irony are hard to peel away.
Exactly.
I mean, we notice that in the copies that we have, which I copied from this book, I happen to own this book, it's page 1. So this is kind of like a prefatory statement.
Right, exactly.
Or you might even say a poetics.
Right.
He's basically saying this is how I see the role of the poet. Tyrone, thank you so much.
Thank you, Ed.
Thanks. This was great.
If you liked this episode, watch another and subscribe.
And join us for ModPo, a free and open course at modpo.org.